So you've been through 2 8-week sessions.
Correct.
So how has your experience as a working professional been with taking the classes Monday, Wednesday, and Monday in person and Wednesday online? How is that working with your work schedule?
I would say it's actually working really well with my work schedule. The best part about it is that Mondays and Wednesdays, they're not on the days where it would follow like the Lockheed Martin weekend. We just work Monday through Thursday. So
Okay.
I think by being on Mondays and Wednesdays, Monday normally being maybe your most meeting intensive day, as well as Wednesdays, it just kind of just keeps that flow. You know what I mean? So you could maybe go to class sometimes, like, being a little tired, but I would say going to class is more of it's a different kind of engagement versus if you're actually working and, dealing with meetings. So for me, I personally like the Monday, Wednesday, and it allows me to do what I want to do in my personal life on the Tuesday, Thursday kind of time.
How much time did you spend on the class outside of actual class period?
I guess it would vary because we would have 3-hour classes each day, so 6 hours in class total. For the class was more like a group setting kind of conversation, it would probably spend more like 3 hours outside of class because that was more of a community-based one. But for a class like yours, or it was intro to it, or my algorithms course, I would say I spent more about, I feel like 6 is over exaggerating, but I would typically sometimes do like a whole weekend. So I would kind of utilize like my Friday and or Saturday because, we have Fridays off for the average Lockheed Martin employee and kind of spend that whole day, I don't want to say cramming, but trying to take care of all of the assignments because I would say so far algorithms has been my hardest class. So hoping it stays that way and it just gets easier. But who knows?
So coming in as, what are you technically, a mechanical engineer?
I am technically on my job description a systems engineer, but my background in education is aerospace engineering, so aeronautical engineering is my background.
So how much programming had you done before your first class in the Fort Worth program?
I did not realize that I was doing programming at first until I got into the Fort Worth class. I was working in Linux SUSE. That's what I primarily work in. So I wasn't really making bash scripts or coding to say, but I was just kind of doing like system integrity kind of things and, maintaining the system without really realizing that that was software engineering. I would say if I was working a 40-hour week, which I do, I was maybe 4 hours of that was programming without really realizing it. Now I'm so much more aware of it, and I would say that I'm night and day.
So when you made the decision to join the Fort Worth program, what was your motivation?
My motivation was I want to advance my skills, really. Everybody always speaks AI, artificial intelligence, and yes, that is like the big topic right now. Everybody is kind of doing it for money, I would say. For me, that wasn't exactly my motivation. Yes, I did want to get a higher paying job like everybody else would want to, right? But I wanted to just enhance my skills. And so the biggest hurdle I kept running into, because I applied to just regular UTA, I applied to UT Austin, trying to find a program to where I didn't need to take a GRE, but also I didn't have to have a software engineering background. And so I got denied from both of those locations because I either didn't meet the prerequisites or I didn't have like a class. I would have to take some classes a la carte and then try to reapply to the program. And that was just not exactly, the desire or the goal. And so you guys showed up the week before classes started or so with the lunch and learn. And it was honestly just a golden opportunity and I seized it. And so you guys was just a blessing that was on the horizon. And this program has been exactly what I needed, exactly what I wanted. And even when it comes to the benefits, Lockheed Martin covers the whole program financially. So when I graduate with my master's in software engineering from UTA Fort Worth, I will not owe anything to UTA Fort Worth. And that is honestly, they just checked all the boxes. And so what made me want to enroll to the program, I was sincerely looking to advance my skills so that I would stay competitive in the job market as I look to advance my career. And UTA Fort Worth offered the perfect opportunity to where you didn't have to have a background in software engineering, and you guys were willing to teach me from the ground up, and I seized the opportunity, and I truly want to honor that opportunity.
Coming into the program, you knew that you didn't really have the background because, like you said, you'd been, not admitted to various programs. So were you a little bit anxious about starting the program to see, it's like, how am I going to get into this if I don't have the background?
So I would say, if anything, I wasn't nervous because I come from an athlete kind of background, from like playing like collegiate sports to that kind of aspect. So I kind of have that competitive mentality. But I would say what really made me not nervous is because you guys offered an introduction to software engineering course in which you guys taught us a non-object oriented language, which was C programming, which gave me the foundation to be able to then step into a harder class like algorithms or a harder class like the ones in the future and be more mentally in that programming mindset. And we had one of the best professors that we could possibly have, which was Donna French, just so y'all know.
Your check is in the mail. Did you feel comfortable moving on in the program after taking the leveling class, after taking 5305, and then going on to the other 3 classes? Was it sufficient preparation? I know some people would have to question whether or not it would be sufficient, and there's only so much we can do in 8 weeks, but most of you from the first cohort, the students that you've been in class with, you've all been successful at the program. So is that one class enough to prepare you, at least get you started if you're willing? I mean, you've obviously put in a lot of work on your own time, and congrats to you for that. But with that work on your own, has it been enough to get you there?
I would say moderate amount. So I wouldn't say completely. 5305 taught us C programming and taught us the concept of writing a program language. We understood the structure now. We understood the different types of elements, like a string, an integer, and a float. And we understood the basic to moderate concept of software engineering when it comes to programming. Well, our following professor in algorithms was doing everything in Python. And so you were not prior exposed to that. It wasn't exactly like reading a foreign language, but it was not as easy to follow along. And then, some things are not just all like material-based. Some things are different teaching methods and everything like that. So it went from having like a seasoned professor to having a professor that is still fresher in the career area of like teaching students. And not, like professor or anything like that. That is just the truth of my experience. We got the concepts, we got the coding, we got some experience, and experience is a very valuable part of doing anything, especially coding. And the gaps that weren't filled was now trying to do everything in Python if you did not come from a previous programming background. So all the students that came from a software engineering background, it was kind of like we was naturally divided. The left side of the class were all software engineers that pretty much already did it, and then the right side of the class was pretty much everybody from the 5305 class. So we did alliances really quick with the young adults that knew what they were doing, and we was like, hey, let's figure this out together. And so the biggest hurdle was just going into a new language that looked foreign at a faster pace with lesson plans that might not have been as structured for somebody seeing it for the first time. However, I would say if you was talking to a student that had a software engineering background, like the ones on the left side of the class, like I mentioned earlier, they were like, oh yeah, this is pretty simple. They said we kind of went through algorithms course already going through undergrad, so it was kind of like just a refresher, right? But with that being said, I don't know anybody that failed that class, so that's really good. And I was able to pass that class with an A, I believe.
Vast majority of you got A's.
Yes, so I hope that wasn't a curve. I hope that it was really the effort. And again, the professor did as best he could, and so again, I have nothing negative to say about him. It's just, I felt like if anything, it was just an experience kind of thing, and working with students that just don't come from it. It's like me trying to teach you Spanish and you never spoke Spanish before. It's just totally different. You gave us crash course at the like very last week of the class, and so Python wasn't like fully foreign, but it was still like fairly new, right? And then the stuff that we did in your crash course was slightly different from what the primary stuff we were doing in the algorithms course. I would possibly recommend introducing us to different languages a little bit sooner within the course.
So the Python that you needed for 5311 went beyond what the crash course I gave you was?
Yeah, so in the 5311 course with algorithms, we started writing functions, we started making classes, started making dictionaries and stuff like that. From what I took away with the crash course in Python is that we was able to do some of that stuff, but maybe for me though, maybe I just didn't grasp it, but I did go back to the notes for some things because there was a lot of like how to read files, but we really didn't use that a lot in the 5311 course with how to read files, on how to understand what the next function meant and where the cursor ended when you're reading the file or like taking in new information. So I would say what we learned in the crash course was more for like data analytics based off what I've been doing, which is another great area to work in. But for the 5311 course, we were more sorting algorithms and recognizing repeating steps. Like, I think you did for loops a little bit, but it was kind of more of like iterators and kind of a little bit more of like not advanced, but like, that moderate to advanced kind of area.
Okay.
And so that was where the disconnect really happened.
Okay. That is good information. You got a background in aeronautical, you work at Lockheed, and, you're doing this program, and you started with basically no programming, and you've done it. You've been very successful. So we want to show others, like, here's the formula. Look, it can be done.
Yes, it can. I just want to say I feel honored. I'm very thankful for this opportunity because what I said is from the heart and it is the truth.
Well, I appreciate your time. Have a safe trip on your travels out of town.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Well, you take care.
You too. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.